When I was rejected by pretty much every tech company there is, I used to wonder what was wrong with me. Why would they not give me a chance? How good do you really have to be to get into a company like Google? I used Google as an example, but you can replace it with any tech company that has featured in those fancy day in the life videos where they show you that software engineering is all food and games. These companies are known to pay top dollar and provide best in-house perks for their employees. But are you really paid six figures to play games at Google? What is it really like to work at Google? Let me answer all these questions for you today. Media constantly tells you that you have to be in top 1% to be hired at Google. And the way Hollywood depicts software engineers also makes you think that you have to be some sort of super genius to become a great programmer. While some of these things are true, I don't believe that you have to be the best programmer in the world to get into Google or any other big tech company. If I have to rate myself as a programmer, I definitely don't consider myself as a top 1% programmer by any means. Many of my colleagues are actually better programmers than me. In my experience, getting the job has to do more with your problem solving skills than the actual programming skills. That's because a software engineer doesn't just sit there and write code all day. A good software engineer has a deep understanding of product and what the users want. They help product managers decide what to build based on which products are desirable and feasible at the same time. Once the product roadmap is clear, they need to figure out how to build the product, which involves writing a design document detailing the technical architecture. If you look closer at the job duties, you'll quickly realize that they are more about problem solving rather than the actual programming itself. It's true that being a great programmer can help you accelerate your career as a software engineer, but you can compensate for your programming skills by being a better problem solver. But how do you do that? I have a few confessions to make about that as well. I'll cover them later in the video. Anyway, if you feel like you don't have the programming skills that are in line with Hollywood's interpretation of a coder, don't sweat it. I don't have that kind of skill level either, and I'm doing just fine. After joining Google, every engineer enrolls in a 3-week bootcamp to learn about Google tech stack and the developer workflow. By the end of this bootcamp, you're also expected to build a project along with a team of 5 engineers. In one of the brainstorming sessions with the team, a colleague of mine asked a very interesting question to everyone. How many attempts did it take you to get into Google? At first, I did not think much of this question, but the answers of the teammates were very eye-opening. 4 out of 5 teammates did not get into Google in their first attempt, and I am one of them. First time I applied for Google was in 2017. I reached the on-site stage, but did not make it. As the fate would have it, I was reached out by a Google recruiter in 2021, and this time, I was successful in getting in. I'm glad that I don't have to write about all the companies that rejected me on my LinkedIn. Otherwise, my LinkedIn profile would be very long. In my opinion, the main difference between people who get in and people who don't is the lack of trying. So if you really fancy cracking one of these top tech companies, stop talking yourself out of it by saying these jobs are hard or whatever. Just keep trying and you would crack any job at any tech company that you want. Ever since I joined Google, many people have asked me this. How good do you really have to be to crack interviews at Google? And I have a confession to make here. If you don't already know, when you interview for Google or any other big tech company, they ask you specific kind of questions in the interviews. These questions are based on data structures and algorithms. LeetCode is a very popular website that helps you practice these questions. LeetCode has all these problems categorized as easy, medium, or hard. Many people think that you have to be some sort of a prodigy who can solve these hard problems in like 20 minutes to get into Google. And to get to that level, many people start doing competitive programming and whatnot. But if I have to share my reality, I can only solve 50% of these hard problems. And if you put a time limit of 45 minutes, which is usually how long the interview is, this number reduces to like 25%. And with the added pressure of an interviewer looking at me, the chances of me solving a very hard problem in an interview is very low. In my experience, if the question is very hard, the interviewer is always there to help. Additionally, you don't have to give that perfect top answer from LeetCode for the hard problems. In fact, there have been times when I passed an interview without even giving a working solution because the question was too hard. And if you still can't get it, well, you win some, you lose some. So if you're struggling to solve the hard problems, don't worry about it. If you want me to make a video on how to get better at interviews, let me know in the comments. Now that you know my interviewing skills are not out of this world, how did I crack interviews at companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Uber? Most people don't know, but there are 2 things you need to crack any tech interview. First, of course, is the skill. I talked about how to improve your skills already in a couple of my videos. Second, and the part that most people don't talk about, is luck. Veritasium, who is one of my favorite YouTubers, made a very interesting video on this. He did a simulation for one highly competitive scenario to find out the role luck plays in the selection process. He showed that if skill played 95% role in your selection, and luck was only responsible for the other 5%, there's 85% chance that the person who got selected this time would not get selected the next time they give the same exam. In other words, the Google interview is as competitive as the scenario he simulated, and I give the Google interview again. There is an 85% chance that I would not get selected. He also showed that the candidates who got selected were generally luckier than the other candidates in the pool. For me personally, I don't have to do any simulation to reach this conclusion. I already know this from my experience of interviewing at Google multiple times. As I already mentioned, I did not make it the last time I interviewed at Google. If I were given a question of the same difficulty level as the one I could not solve the last time, there is no doubt in my mind that I would not have made it this time either. All this is not to say that the skill doesn't matter. When you are preparing for the interviews, do as if the luck is not even a factor. But if you do get that dreaded rejection email, don't be so hard on yourself. Take it chill and know that every dog has its day. I already had mine, and you might be next. Another question people ask me is, what were all the different technologies I had to learn to get into Google? In figure skating, you're scored based on the difficulty level of a move and how well you execute it. In Google interviews, however, this is not the case. Let me explain what I mean by that. Many people think that you have to master a lot of different technologies to get a job at Google. They believe that you somehow have to be proficient in front-end technologies like React.js or Redux, and at the same time be a back-end expert who knows database management and whatnot. In my experience, simplicity wins when it comes to getting into big tech companies like Google. In my case, I did delve into different technologies like Android development, React, and MongoDB before getting into Google, but I don't believe they were all needed. All you need to do is pick something that you really like, build a lot of interesting projects using it, and become an expert at this one thing. Doing this will get you an interview, and at that point, it's all about your interviewing skills and a little luck. And before you know it, you might be making your own YouTube videos on how I got into Google without a CS degree. If you have watched any day in the life videos of a Google software engineer, you know that Google has some of the best perks for its employees. There's free food, great gym facilities, sleeping pods, game rooms, and whatnot. While all of that is true, and Google does have one of the best offices, I believe that focusing on these things over-glamorizes the job itself. That's because along with some of the best perks, Google has some of the best engineers working for it. And if you want to work alongside the best minds in the industry, you better be ready for it. There's this constant feeling of not being good enough when you join, and it takes a while to get rid of it. And when it comes to promotions, you will be compared to your peers, and it doesn't help if your co-workers are so smart. On the flip side, you do get to learn a lot from your teammates, and it really helps you become a better software engineer. In summary, it's not all food and games. If you want to learn more about what exact path I took and all the technologies I learned to become a software engineer at Google, you can watch this video at the top. My name is Sahil, and I'll see you in the next one.